The heavens are torn apart as cultivator armies collide. Ancient talismans ignite like miniature suns, while colossal beasts trample the battlefield. In the midst of chaos, a blood-red barrier traps a lone cultivator unbreakable, self-healing feared even by nascent soul experts. But when lightning splits the prison open and a cold figure steps into the war, the balance of the battlefield begins to shift. This is not just a war. This is the moment Han Li enters the slaughter. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. With Devil Concord's challenge still echoing through the heavens, the shriveled old man frowned slightly. However, he soon spoke again, his voice calm and unhurried. We will inevitably face the three great heavenly south cultivators sooner or later. However, I must remain behind to oversee the battle and cannot take part personally. I will have to trouble Sect Master Fang to occupy one of them, given that you have cultivated the Heaven Flash Devil arts to its peak, and can absorb the Heaven Fiend Devil's true chi into your body. It should not be a difficult task. Since we have already reached an agreement, I will naturally take action, the black-robed man replied coldly. I also wish to test the true strength of the foremost Devil Dao cultivator of Heavenly South. A green glow flickered within his eyes as dense black chi slowly rose from his body. Without another word, he shot off toward Devil Concord like a streak of darkness. The scholarly man surnamed Zhong and the short man surnamed Bu exchanged no words either, following closely behind him as flashes of silver and red light. Seeing this, the three great Heavenly South cultivators hurriedly gave chase. In the blink of an eye, all six figures vanished into the clouds, leaving no trace behind. Not long after, the sky in the surrounding region began to change violently. One moment it burned a blazing crimson, the next it plunged into pitch-black darkness. Thunderous explosions roared across the heavens, while sudden flashes of light tore through the clouds, briefly illuminating the chaos within. As six late nascent soul cultivators clashed high above, the war between cultivator armies and spell warrior forces erupted across the ground and lower skies. This battle was vastly different from ordinary cultivator skirmishes, where opponents would simply close in and exchange blows once within range. Instead, both sides chanted incantations in unison, activating layers of defensive formations around themselves. Slowly, an enormous barrier of light rose between the two armies, enveloping their main forces. At first glance, it appeared that the cultivator army had completed its defenses more quickly. However, this did not mean that Taoist elemental techniques were superior to spirit techniques. The reason lay in the fact that most defensive spell formations relied on formation tools, which required additional preparation. Seizing the initiative, Long Han, the commander of the Heavenly South Army, gave the order without hesitation. The first wave of attacks was to be launched by more than 10 rare long-range treasures, among them the massive gong Han Li had seen earlier. At that moment, the platform supporting the gong had already been moved to the forefront of the army. It floated effortlessly upward, stopping nearly 100 meters above the ground. 8 burly men clad in yellow stood guard around it. As for the giant who had once sat beside the gong, he now stood upright, gripping a 3-meter-long iron hammer, his eyes tightly shut. Not far away, 2 cultivators raised a 20-meter-tall triangular banner that gleamed with black light. Embroidered upon it was a lifelike black flood dragon, its form vivid and ferocious. Further back, 9 young women dressed in red gently hovered in the air, holding a tray draped in crimson cloth, concealing whatever lay beneath. They were arranged in a strange and intricate formation. At the very front of another troop stood 3 old men in embroidered robes, each carrying a gourd nearly half his height upon his back. These 3 groups were among the first to receive the order to attack. Suddenly, the giant beside the bronze gong opened his eyes. A powerful aura of yellow light burst forth from his body as he swung the massive hammer down with all his might. A blinding flash of golden light erupted from the gong, vanishing almost as soon as it appeared. In that instant, the golden radiance shattered into countless specks of starlight, shooting toward the enemy. After traveling roughly 40 meters, the specks burst apart with a series of sharp pops, transforming into clouds of golden mist. The giant struck the gong again and again, unleashing wave after wave of shimmering starlight. Soon the golden mist merged into a surging tide that rolled toward the spell warrior army. Meanwhile, the triangular black banner was shaken violently by the 2 cultivators beneath it. From seemingly nothingness, a black flood dragon burst forth. soaring through the air as strands of azure and black smoke spilled from its jaws. With a deafening roar, a raging black windstorm formed around it, hurling sand and stone in every direction and obscuring the view of nearby cultivators. At the same time, the 9 red-clothed women placed their hands upon the tray and began chanting melodious incantations. In a flash of crimson light, 9 radiant copper plates shot forth, spinning rapidly through the air. Each plate was a meter-long fire-red mirror gleaming with spiritual brilliance. From them emerged countless fist-sized firebirds, their bodies and beaks wreathed in flame. With sharp, piercing cries, they streaked toward the spell warrior army like blazing arrows. The 3 embroidered-robed elders stepped forward, forming a triangular formation. They removed the massive gourds from their backs and opened them simultaneously. Instantly bone-chilling white chi poured forth, freezing the air and coating the ground ahead in a thick layer of frost. The icy tide rapidly advanced toward the spell warriors. All of these exceptional treasures struck almost simultaneously, just as the spell warriors finally completed their defensive barrier. Even under the shriveled old man's command, they had no choice but to endure. In the next instant, golden mist, black winds, and blazing firebirds crashed against the spell formation barrier, causing it to shudder violently. Seeing this, Longhan immediately issued the order for the second wave of attacks before the first wave had even subsided. This second barrage consisted of large-scale secret techniques unleashed through the combined efforts of multiple sects. Beams of multicolored light and surging devil fire erupted from the cultivator ranks, striking the spell warrior army relentlessly. The barrier trembled once more under the ferocious assault. The shriveled old man's expression darkened. He had never expected the spell formations to activate so slowly, leaving the spell warrior army so vulnerable. Under such ruthless attacks, his forces were completely suppressed, unable to retreat or counterattack. These terrifying large-scale techniques were something even a nascent soul cultivator would hesitate to face without the protection of a formation. Turning to the black-robed woman beside him, the old man spoke grimly. "Madam Lu, it seems we must rely on your giant beasts. Otherwise, we will not be able to hold our ground." The woman smiled faintly and replied casually, "Since our sect master has lent them to you, feel free to use them. There is no need to inform me personally." The shriveled old man nodded and immediately gave the order. A series of earth-shaking roars thundered through the sky as more than 10 enormous silhouettes emerged, forcibly blocking the incoming attacks. The giant armored beasts wasted no time, charging straight toward the cultivator army the moment they appeared. In response, the cultivators split their attacks. Some focused on restraining the beasts, while others continued their relentless assault on the spell warrior barrier. At that moment, several high-grade spell warriors seized the opportunity and flew forward. As they advanced, they flung dozens of multicolored beads into the air while chanting incantations. An astonishing sight unfolded. Some of the beads plunged directly into the ground and vanished. Others shattered in mid-air, releasing azure light, clear water, dazzling radiance or raging flames. Moments later, these beads transformed into demonic beasts, 30-meter-long yellow pythons, 20-meter-tall firewolves, transparent azure rocks, blue demon tortoises, shrouded in icy mist, and many more. As soon as they took shape, these beasts followed behind the giant armored creatures, charging fearlessly toward the cultivator army. Thanks to their innate defenses, thick armor, and layered protective spells, the giant beasts continued their advance despite being battered and wounded. The strange beasts behind them, however, fared far worse. Though their auras were fearsome, many were destroyed by a single strike, their bodies scattering into specks of spiritual light. As their forms dissipated, the beads fell to the ground, completely drained of spiritual chi. The high-grade spell warriors showed no concern whatsoever. Raising their arms again, they tossed out another batch of beads. With a fresh incantation, new demonic beasts took shape and charged forward without fear. This sight alarmed many cultivators, forcing them to divert more attention toward the beasts and reducing the pressure on the spell warrior barrier. Longhan's expression darkened. He prepared to issue new orders, then hesitated. Seizing this hard-won opportunity, the shriveled old man gave the command for a full spell technique assault. In an instant, spirit lights of countless colors flared. As incantations echoed across the battlefield, 3-meter-wide fireballs and tree-sized icicles condensed out of thin air. "Spirit technique spell formation," Longhan muttered under his breath. Knowing he could no longer suppress the attack, he hastily transmitted an order. The rare treasures immediately ceased firing, and their owners withdrew at top speed, retreating back into the ranks and re-entering the protective barrier. At the same time, over 1,000 cultivators flew out, each holding a meter-tall formation flag. In a rapid, fluid movement, they assembled into an enormous formation. The flags were thrown skyward, forming a shimmering rainbow barrier above the cultivator army. Moments later, hundreds of massive fireballs and icicles crashed down, engulfing the battlefield in roaring flames and freezing mist. As for the giant armored beasts and hollow demonic beasts, they had already advanced halfway toward the cultivator army. Only 8 of the strongest giant beasts remained, while most of the second wave of hollow beasts had been destroyed. Yet the remaining demonic beasts showed no fear in the face of the vast cultivator army, continuing their brutal and unstoppable charge. The cultivator's rainbow barrier was clearly designed specifically to counter spirit techniques. Even under such relentless bombardment, the barrier did not tremble in the slightest. Seeing this, Longhan felt a surge of relief. The 1,000 cultivators responsible for activating the formation were elite disciples of the Nine Nations Union. Judging from the precision and fluency with which they deployed the spell formation, Wei Wuya's earlier praise of them had not been exaggerated in the slightest. Seeing that their assault had failed to achieve any effect, the shriveled old man's expression grew increasingly unsightly. Nevertheless, he issued another order without hesitation. This time, the incantations of the spell warrior army no longer produced simple fireballs or icicles. Instead, fire crows and translucent ice pythons began to take shape within the sky itself. Naturally, due to the greater complexity of these techniques, the casting process required significantly more time. At that moment, disturbances erupted within the cultivator army. A division of green-robed cultivators flew out from the barrier, raising spirit beast pouches from their waists. In bursts of multicolored light, several dozen demon beasts were released into the battlefield. Among them, the 3 leading beasts were particularly extraordinary. One was a rare dragon horse, bearing a single horn upon its head and scales that shimmered with pale white light. Another was a 2-headed demon lion, its green fur reeking of a pungent fishy stench. The most terrifying of all was a 15-meter-long venomous scorpion, its crimson carapace gleaming coldly, a pitch-black stinger arching menacingly behind it. These were the most ferocious and carefully nurtured spirit beasts of the controlling spirit sect. The moment they appeared, they led a domineering charge toward the giant beasts and transformed spirit beasts. For a time, the battlefield descended into utter chaos as beasts clashed with beasts. Although only the 3 primary spirit beasts were capable of confronting a single giant beast on equal footing, their numerical advantage and disciplined coordination allowed them to halt the giant's advance and even gradually gain the upper hand. Simultaneously, thousands of cultivators rose into the sky. Divided into 5 units, they wielded their various magic tools and treasures, unleashing relentless barrages upon the spell warrior army below. The spirit techniques currently being prepared by the spell warriors were far more vicious than any before. Naturally, the cultivators had no intention of waiting idly for these techniques to be completed. They continuously unleashed waves of magic tool attacks, battering the Mulan defensive formation without pause. The shriveled old man's face darkened. He let out a cold snort and ordered a large number of spell warriors to take to the skies and engage the cultivators directly. Instantly, the heavens erupted into fierce exchanges of spirit techniques, magic tools, and rare treasures. Amid the chaos, hundreds of defensive magic tools shattered under enemy fire, their owners plummeting from the sky, a truly desperate and tragic sight. Yet during this brief delay, the spell warrior army completed preparations for their next spell technique barrage. Dozens of fire crows and ice pythons surged forward, moving as if they were living creatures. Likewise, while the Mulan were casting their techniques, the cultivators had also prepared their defenses. Before the attacks could land, countless magic treasures and tools surged upward, destroying the majority of the fire crows and ice pythons. Those that managed to break through were completely blocked by the rainbow barrier, causing only minor ripples without inflicting any real damage. Seeing this, Longhan frowned deeply. It appeared that the Nine Nations Union's defensive formation could not entirely negate more powerful spirit techniques. After letting out a long breath, he gave the order for the cultivator army to advance slowly under the protection of the rainbow barrier. At once, many cultivators retrieved their magic tools and treasures, using them to shield themselves. Incantations soon followed, and the various artifacts began to glow brilliantly clearly, being readied for imminent combat. A cold glint flashed through the shriveled old man's eyes. He understood that the cultivators had seized the initiative, advancing to interrupt the preparation of another large-scale spirit technique barrage, and they had succeeded. With the situation changing rapidly, he ordered the spell warrior army to abandon their defensive barrier and advance forward as well. The distance between the two armies shrank rapidly. When they were only 300 meters apart, the faces of the opposing forces could already be seen clearly. At that moment, 7 white jade talismans flew out from the cultivator ranks. They were released by 7 solemn elders of the Phoenix Cry sect. Upon leaving their hands, the talismans shot forward in streaks of white light, halting roughly 100 meters above the spell warrior army before revealing their true forms. The talismans expanded and contracted rhythmically, releasing deafening peals of thunder. In the next instant, they shattered one after another, transforming into spheres of dazzling white lightning. These spheres rapidly expanded, becoming miniature suns nearly 30 meters wide in the blink of an eye. Many spell warriors stared upward in shock, momentarily frozen by the sight. Not good ancient talismans. The shriveled old man cried out, his face turning pale. Before he could react further, the 7 blazing suns detonated in succession. Scorching arcs of lightning instantly engulfed the spell warrior ranks, forming 7 massive electric storms. As if taking this as a signal, cultivators across the battlefield hurled out their own talismans. Countless flashes of multicolored light filled the sky, followed by a muffled thunderclap echoing from within the white radiance. "It's quite lively out there," Han Li muttered softly. At that moment he was gazing calmly at the crimson barrier before him. Ever since he had realized the Mulan intended to trap them, Han Li's earlier worries had vanished without a trace. While the Mulan clearly placed immense confidence in this barrier, Han Li was equally confident in his ability to break restrictions. The only question was when to make his move. Though he was willing to lend his strength against the Mulan invasion, Han Li had no desire to become mere cannon fodder dying meaninglessly amidst chaotic warfare. This was a battle between vast armies of cultivators, not a duel between individuals. If he were detected the moment he emerged, or subjected to simultaneous attacks by several nascent soul cultivators or hundreds of spell warriors, even his lightning movement would not guarantee safety. It would be far wiser to act once the battlefield descended into full melee, when most high-grade cultivators were already engaged. Even without the appearance of the blood barrier, Han Li would have had other methods to avoid the most dangerous moments. Feeling the violent vibrations echoing through the barrier, he sensed that the decisive clash was imminent. Though he did not know the origin of such a terrifying attack, he knew with certainty that it would be devastating to whichever side received it. With that thought, Han Li sighed softly, shook his head, and began inspecting other sections of the blood barrier. The barrier was exceedingly strange. His spiritual sense could not penetrate it at all. Though it was clearly a Devil Dao restriction, even his divine Devilbane lightning had no effect upon it, greatly piquing Han Li's interest. Earlier, he had examined various sections of the barrier using his bright-sight spirit eyes, yet all he could see was an endless layer of crimson. This failure did not trouble him. With the battle raging outside, he still had ample time to study it. Han Li opened his mouth and spat out a small azure flying sword. Guiding it with his spiritual sense, he transformed it into a foot-long streak of light and slashed fiercely at the barrier. With a muffled bang, the barrier remained unmoved, while the flying sword was rebounded backward several meters. Unsurprised, Han Li recalled the sword and produced a pitch-black object, the magic treasure known as the Thousand-Fold Mountain. He tossed it into the air and formed incantation gestures with his hands. Black light flashed, revealing a small mountain over 30 meters tall. With a point of his finger, the mountain trembled and slammed violently against the distant wall. Black and crimson light interwove upon impact. Yet the mountain was repelled, causing only slight ripples across the barrier. A trace of surprise flashed across Han Li's face. Stroking his chin, he pondered briefly before pointing at the mountain once more, sending it toward the center of the blood barrier. As he murmured an incantation, black light surged and the mountain began to expand rapidly. Moments later, it grew to over 200 meters tall, pressing firmly against both the upper and lower edges of the barrier. Unwilling to stop, Han Li raised his arms and struck the mountain with successive spell seals, accelerating its expansion. With thunderous rumbling, the mountain swelled past 300 meters. its entire form radiating dense black light. It resembled a colossal pillar forcefully propping up the crimson barrier. Soon the barrier began to bulge slightly, followed by violent trembling. Han Li's eyes lit up at the sight. He hastily circulated his spiritual power, continuing to strike spell seals into the mountain. Slowly but surely it expanded further, deforming the blood barrier until it was abruptly halted. Han Li stopped his incantations and narrowed his eyes, staring at the top of the barrier. It seemed that using the thousand-fold mountain to break this restriction would not work. He would have to try the celestial ice flames and the purple apex flames instead. Han Li waved his hand at the massive mountain. In a flash of light, it rapidly shrank back to only a few inches in size before flying straight into his sleeve. As if displaying its own tenacity, the blood barrier soon recovered as well, returning to its original flawless shape. He then turned and extended a finger. With a sharp crackle, a walnut-sized sphere of faint blue flames appeared at his fingertip. Han Li shouted softly, "Go," and flicked his finger, sending the flame toward the distant wall. With a light bang, the blue flame burst apart, instantly spreading into a layer of icy blue frost that coated the inner surface of the barrier. In the blink of an eye, the interior transformed into a world of extreme cold, so frigid that one's breath would freeze into mist the moment it left the mouth. Blue frost shimmered across the inside of the blood barrier. Han Li blurred forward, pressing his palm against it as azure sword chi surged forth. The ice around his hand shattered immediately, scattering translucent shards through the air. Han Li's expression darkened. The area beneath the shattered ice remained entirely unharmed, still crimson as fresh blood. The barrier itself had not truly frozen. It was merely coated with frost. At its core, blood chi continued to churn violently. After pondering briefly, Han Li swept his hand again, this time enveloping it in dense purple devil flames. He pressed it directly against the blood barrier. The difference was immediately apparent. Compared to the celestial ice flames, the purple apex flames were far more domineering. The moment the purple fire made contact, the blood mist seeping from the barrier instantly solidified and began to glow with brilliant purple light. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face. Carefully controlling the purple apex flames, he concentrated their power onto a single small area of the barrier. Then he opened his mouth and spat out a bolt of golden lightning thunder echoing from his throat. Golden light flashed as the lightning struck, leaving behind fine cracks across the surface. Yet in the next instant, the barrier shuddered violently and repaired itself completely. Han Li was momentarily stunned. This blood barrier bore a striking resemblance to Ghost Dao techniques. It was capable of self-restoration. No wonder the Mulan were so confident in this restriction. Even the purple apex flames were unable to damage it. Such a formation was more than sufficient to trap nascent soul cultivators. Though alarm flickered briefly in his heart, Han Li remained calm. He slapped his storage pouch and produced a thumb-sized azure pearl. This was one of the lightning beads he had refined not long ago, and he had yet to test it. Unable to clearly perceive the battle outside, relying only on the distant thunderous vibrations, Han Li judged that the fighting had only just begun. Countless dangers would still lie ahead. Moreover, if he failed to escape in time and the cultivator army were defeated, he would be surrounded by Mulan forces. No matter how capable he was, survival under such circumstances would be impossible. With that thought, Han Li willed the lightning bead to spin in his palm. It began to glow brilliantly before shooting straight toward the blood barrier. A muffled thunderclap erupted as a head-sized sphere of golden azure light smashed into the dome. The entire barrier shook violently. Astonishment flashed across Han Li's face. The power of this lightning bead far exceeded his expectations. Before the thought even fully formed, his expression changed sharply. Azure light burst from his body as he shot forward. The lightning bead had torn open a small hole in the barrier, and Han Li flew toward it without hesitation. The opening rapidly shrank, but Han Li slipped through just in time. Joy surged through his heart. To his surprise, the lightning bead refined from the purple apex flames, and the azure lantern flames could easily break through such a durable barrier. Had this method failed, his only remaining options would have been the gold-devouring beetles or the blood devil sword. The gold-devouring beetles could consume virtually anything, but devouring the barrier would have required precious time. As for the blood devil sword, the price of using it was something Han Li was unwilling to pay lightly. The nameless lightning bead's effectiveness was an unexpected delight. It seemed the purple apex flames alone were ineffective because they possessed an ice attribute, unlike the lantern flames, which were true fire attribute flames. However, the moment Han Li emerged from the barrier, startled cries rang out before he could even take in his surroundings. Immediately afterward came explosions, rumbling shockwaves, and furious roars from all directions. Han Li hastily surveyed the battlefield, his heart tightening. He found himself surrounded by 10 spell warriors. Fortunately, a quick glance revealed that their cultivation levels were not particularly high. Among them were 2 core formation spell warriors, while the rest were only at the foundation establishment stage. They clutched formation flags and were preparing to unleash spirit techniques until Han Li appeared right before them. Ignoring them for the moment, Han Li examined his surroundings. His breath turned cold. The sky and ground alike were saturated with dense spiritual light and treasure auras, accompanied by an unending chain of explosions near and far. Cultivators and spell warriors from both sides were locked in chaotic melee fighting in scattered groups of varying size. At a glance, Han Li could not tell which side held the advantage. He turned back, his gaze growing icy as it settled upon the nearby spell warriors. When the spell warriors realized Han Li had emerged from the blood barrier, they froze in shock. Not good. He's a nascent soul cultivator. Summon the great sages, one of the core formation cultivators shouted as he recovered first. He slapped the back of his head and spat out a green saber toward Han Li before fleeing in a streak of green light. The others snapped out of their daze as well. The second core formation cultivator released a fire-red trident and simultaneously sent a voice transmission talisman skyward. As for the foundation establishment spell warriors, they raised their formation flags and began chanting. Over 10 streaks of light burst from the flags, merging into a raging sea of flames that engulfed Han Li. Han Li was briefly surprised that they chose to restrain him rather than flee. A trace of killing intent immediately surfaced on his face. Azure light flickered as dozens of bamboo cloudswarm swords shot out from his sleeve. With a casual wave of his hand, he struck them with a spell seal. Each sword trembled lightly before instantly splitting into multiple copies, forming a dense screen of swordlight around him. The sword chi surged upward with terrifying pressure. The 2 core formation cultivators were horrified, yet they still urged their treasures to attack. Han Li sneered coldly and flicked 2 fingers. Several streaks of swordlight shot forth, intercepting the saber and trident. In a blinding flash of azure light, the 2 magic treasures were completely suppressed, their spiritual light rapidly dimming as they let out mournful wails. As for the sea of flames, the surrounding swordlight extinguished it the moment it drew near. With no time to waste, Han Li had no intention of holding back. At his command, hundreds of streaks of swordlight flared brightly and shot simultaneously toward the nearby spell warriors. The Foundation Establishment spell warriors attempted to block with their formation flags, but they were shredded instantly, offering no resistance. When the core formation spell warriors saw the swordlight bearing down on them, their faces drained of color. Without the courage to withstand such power, they fled in streaks of light. A cold glint flashed through Han Li's eyes. He formed an incantation gesture, and 2 masses of swordlight gave chase. With sharp ringing sounds, they fused together and accelerated dramatically. Barely 50 meters away, the fleeing Mulan spell warriors were overtaken. Despite their desperate defensive techniques, the azure swordlight shattered everything in its path. Without even a scream, their bodies were torn apart, their primal souls annihilated completely. Just as Han Li finished them, a violent roar thundered from above. A blinding yellow light pounced toward him at terrifying speed. Han Li's expression shifted. He instantly unfolded his thunderstorm wings and vanished in a flash of silver light. The figure within the yellow radiance slowed abruptly and came to a halt, revealing a beardless old man dressed in yellow robes. Fury burned on his face, mingled with shock and confusion. He was a Mulan sage who had been engaged in battle with a Heavenly South nascent soul cultivator when he suddenly received a desperate transmission. Disengaging immediately, he rushed over only to witness 2 clan members slain by azure swordlight. One of them had even been his chosen successor, his own nephew. Yet Han Li had already vanished. Suppressing his raging hatred, the old man recalled the presence of a particularly fearsome Heavenly South cultivator and hastily swept his spiritual sense outward. In the next instant, silver light flashed behind him. Han Li reappeared. The old man roared as he spun around, flinging a cubic magic treasure toward Han Li. Brilliant yellow light erupted as it expanded instantly, transforming into a colossal brick over 40 meters long, screaming through the air with terrifying momentum. That's all for today's content. See you in the next part. Support me by becoming a member. It will give me more motivation. Thank you so much.